When was Jesus born? The Bible doesn't tell us, but every major event in Jesus' life appears to be linked to some feast day or some day of observation. Just something on the Jewish calendar that got explained. Jesus died on Passover because he was God's Passover lamb. He rose on the Feast of First Fruits. The church was born on Pentecost. These are all feast days or holy days. His birth is very likely linked to an important day on the Hebrew calendar. Let's read from Luke because the text gives us a clue about his birth. Luke 2:8. Now there were in the same country shepherds living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. These shepherds are out in the field watching their flocks at night. The Talmud says that shepherds are out in the field starting in March. Now, first of all, what is the Talmud? The Talmud is an interpretation of the Mishnah. Okay, so what's the Mishnah? The Mishnah is an interpretation of the Torah, the law of Moses. The law of Moses is known as the written Torah. The Mishnah contains oral traditions known as oral Torah. These are things that were not written down by Moses, but according to tradition, these oral laws were passed down and they help interpret the law of Moses. The Talmud is composed of the Mishnah and commentaries on the Mishnah. When people say Talmud, they may be referring to just the commentaries known as the Gemara. But the Talmud is composed of the Mishnah and Gemara, the commentaries. The Talmud is like an encyclopedia set. It's huge. Moses gave us 5 books. The Jews turned those 5 books into an encyclopedia set. I don't think that's what God intended the law to be. Jesus said, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. Then Jesus said, Matthew 22:40, on these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. But the Jews came up with an encyclopedia set to try to be holy. And people these days are trying to get back into practicing the law. It's crazy. They want to know how to pronounce certain Hebrew words and go through certain rituals because they think this makes them holy. Anyways, back to when Jesus was born. Talmud says shepherds are out in the field starting in March. You probably want the sheep in pens at night during the winter. So why do the shepherds start going out in March? Because lambs give birth in the spring, usually in March and April. Most ewes, that's female sheep, are in season once per year. There is a short period of time for them to get pregnant. This is true for most types of sheep, and farmers want their ewes giving birth early spring. If they give birth in the winter, it's too cold for the lambs and there's not much food. Early spring is what farmers aim for. And this hasn't changed since the time of Jesus. Now, the shepherds were watching their flocks at night. Luke 2:8. Now there were in the same country shepherds living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. Why are they watching over their flocks at night? Because they're looking for births. Ewes can usually give birth without any problems, but farmers still need to keep watch night and day to make sure there are no problems or complications. So as ewes were giving birth to lambs, God says to the shepherds, go see the Lamb of God that is born. Now, Jesus was born in Bethlehem. This is interesting because Bethlehem was the place that provided lambs for the temple sacrifice. Now, Jesus was God's Passover lamb. Jesus died on Passover. Concerning the Passover lamb, God said in Exodus 12:5, your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. So one thing about the Passover lamb is that it's supposed to die around the same time he is born. Now, Passover is on Nisan 14. So Jesus was likely born in the month of Nisan, which is in March or April on our calendar. Now, Nisan is the first month on the Jewish calendar. The Jews begin their new year in the 7th month, but Nisan is considered the first month. God said in Exodus 12:2, "This month shall be your beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you." And that is the month of Nisan. Now, what did God tell Moses to do on Nisan 1, the first day of the first month? Exodus 42. "On the first day of the first month, you shall set up the tabernacle of the tent of meeting." The tabernacle of God. God living among men. God, in a sense, is tabernacling with us. He's living with us. God was essentially saying to Moses, this is the day you set up the tabernacle, Moses, on Nisan 1. That's the day the tabernacle must go up. It wasn't, hey, Moses, when you get everything for the tabernacle finished, just put it up. No, it must be put up on Nisan 1. Exodus 40:17. "And it came to pass in the first month of the second year," that's the second year after coming out of Egypt, "on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was raised up." Go to verse 34. "Then the cloud covered the tabernacle of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle." Now we go to the New Testament, John 1:14. "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth." Now you read that and say, okay, Jesus became flesh and dwelt among us. Oh, no. You read that in the Greek and you come to the word dwell, skenao. And what does that word mean in the Greek? Yes, it means to dwell, but how is it used? Outline of biblical usage says, to fix one's tabernacle, have one's tabernacle, abide or live in a tabernacle or tent. Tabernacle. And the definition says, to reside as God did in the tabernacle of old. So Jesus dwelt among us. Basically, he tabernacled with us as God tabernacled with his people in the Old Testament. So why must the tabernacle of God be set up on Nisan 1? Because maybe Jesus was going to be born on Nisan 1. It is the beginning of months. It is a new beginning. All things become new. Nisan means the beginning. Nisan comes in the spring. Jesus was born in the spring when lambs are born. Now, if you live in a place where the 4 seasons are clear, you know during the winter everything dies or goes dormant. But then spring comes and you see life begin again. Things start to turn green. Animals often give birth. And that which was dead comes to life. Spring is symbolic of Jesus coming into this world. Now, some people say Jesus was born in autumn during the Feast of Tabernacles. But if that was the case, Joseph would not be in Bethlehem because all males are supposed to be in Jerusalem during the Feast of Tabernacles. Deuteronomy 16:16, 3 times a year, all your males shall appear before the Lord your God in the place which he chooses, at the Feast of Unleavened Bread, at the Feast of Weeks, and at the Feast of Tabernacles. That place where all males were to appear before the Lord became Jerusalem. If Joseph was in Bethlehem, then he would be breaking the law. And Joseph wouldn't do that. In fact, we are told in Luke 2:41, his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. I'm sure they kept all the other feasts too. Autumn is actually associated with the Lord's second coming, not his first. The Feast of Tabernacles is the last feast. There are the spring feasts and the fall feasts. All the spring feasts have been fulfilled. They are Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, and Pentecost. The fall feasts have not been fulfilled, and they are related to his second coming. They are the Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles. All the fall feasts occur during the 7th month, the month of Tishri, on the Jewish calendar. Okay, so the spring is associated with Jesus' first coming, and the fall is related to his second coming. Now, when Jesus was born, wise men from the east saw his star and came to worship him. They were astrologers. We're not supposed to follow astrology, but God put signs in the heavens to speak to pagan nations. There's an ancient astrology book from the 2nd century called the Tetrabiblos by Claudius Ptolemy, who said the constellation Aries, the ram, is linked to the land of Judea. So the wise men from the east went to Jerusalem looking for Jesus because they were probably reading the stars. Now, Aries, the ram, happens to be the beginning of spring. Aries the ram begins on March 21st. A ram, by the way, is male sheep, for those of you who may not know. I've noticed a lot of people who watch my content are not native English speakers. Now, the spring equinox can occur as early as March 19 and as late as March 21st, but usually on March 20. So March 20 to 21 begins the spring, and the stars move into the constellation Aries, the ram. God may have done that on purpose. Now, Herod the Great died 4 BC, so Jesus was probably born 6 BC. Now, here's the last clue concerning the father of John the Baptist. We read Luke 1:5. There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the division of Abijah. In 1 Chronicles 24, it lists the division of the priests for their schedule of service for coming into the house of the Lord. Abijah is the 8th. The Dead Sea Scrolls has a calendar that lists the order of the priests. If we wind that forward, we can figure out when John was born. Jesus was conceived 6 months after John. Also, the Talmud says the temple was destroyed on a Sunday, and it gave the division of the priests at the time. If we wind that date back, and you wind the date from the Dead Sea Scroll forward, you get the same date. Now, Jonathan Kahn says Jesus was born on March 20th. I came up with the March 20th date, or maybe it could have been the 21st. I came up with that date a long time ago based on the fact that Jesus was most likely born the beginning of spring, because he brings life and is the beginning of life. I'm sure he was born Nisan 1, the date God said to Moses to set up the tabernacle. And I'm sure Nisan 1, in the year Jesus was born, was the beginning of spring on March 20th or the 21st. A male lamb was born. Aries in the stars. Come worship the Lamb of God, the Lamb that brings life and is the beginning of life. Now, I made a video about how the wise men could be from China, but I really have no clue where they are from, as the Bible didn't say. I only put that information out for fun because that idea has been around for hundreds of years, maybe more. There's not enough information on the wise men, but God was speaking to them in dreams. They were the first ones recorded in the Bible to worship Jesus. They knew he was a God king, an emperor. Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope all of you have a happy new year. I'm praying that God will begin to move in mighty ways in 2020. I don't know about you, but I am done with 2019. God bless you guys. Bye-bye.